Real quick, I'd like to thank Gary Franchi from Next News Network for filming this event live. Next News Network, thank you. And before I introduce, do you guys love this hotel? This is now becoming the MAGA Headquarters. I'd like to thank the owners who are also great patriots, Jim and Telly Nagel. Stand up, the owners of the Drake. Now it's an honor to introduce to you a man who you've seen on the Joe Rogan show, a man who you've seen repeatedly on Laura Ingraham and Jesse Waters, and then Laura Ingraham and Jesse Waters, and Tucker Carlson, and then Laura Ingraham and Jesse Waters. That's right. A man that in the spring, when President Trump invited all of his potential vice presidential candidates that were rumors around, Laura Trump, Speaker Mike Johnson, Doug Burgum, Kristi Noem, essentially the entire cabinet was on stage, and then the president goes, Rod Blagojevich, get up here, Rod Blagojevich. I had the honor of bringing the governor, sneaking him down to Mar-a-Lago shortly after President Trump commuted his sentence on February 18, 2020. And he walked by and he goes, whoa, you look good. Whoa, whoa. And then he asked about Patty. And every time he sees Governor Blagojevich, he asks about Patty and he asks about the girls. And before I introduce him, there's a real funny story. This is actually a true story. And he starts asking Rod about Patty and the family, and then he pauses, right? A true story. He pauses and he goes, you're still married to Patty, right? Yes, sir, Mr. President. He goes, good, because if I heard you divorced her, I'm sending your ass back to prison, okay? Ladies and gentlemen, the nation's highest profile Trumpocrat in America, the 40th governor of Illinois, Rod Blagojevich.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Mark. Mark does a better Donald Trump than Donald Trump does. I want to thank him for the introduction, but I want to thank him again for bringing me home from prison. Trump and Mark. Mark played a big role in that, and of course I'm going to be profoundly grateful to him for as long as I live. Thanks, Mark. When he did that, I didn't even know who he was. I just got to know him the 2 years it took to get us back. I'm actually writing a book about that. He plays a role in the chapter called Fired and Freed by Donald Trump. And it was a up and down process because there was a hard political dynamic to it. But he was so steadfast and fantastic, and we had our ups and downs through all of that. And Cash would know what I'm talking about. It's a thing in prison that we call hope time, right? Mm-hmm. When you have this hope that maybe you're not going to do as long as these people want you to do. In my case, it was a 14-year sentence. What did they give you, Cash? You gave 51 months. And, it's a daunting thing to think, 14 years. And but those last 2 years that I was there, when Mark got a hold of my wife, Patty, and played a role in convincing President Trump to take a look at my case and convince him to send me home, that was hope time. Those last 2 years flew by fast, and they weren't easy, but they sure did go fast. So I owe you hope time as well, buddy. Thanks so much for that. With that, you could just give me a standing ovation. Was that what that was? Thank you so much for that. I was going to ask Jessica Jackson if she could do what she does to get you all to stand up for me, because it's been so long since anyone ever gave me a standing ovation. But I guess I don't have to bother you with that. Jessica Jackson, Jesse Jackson, Jesse the Reverend, and I knew each other pretty well, and I have really warm feelings for Reverend Jackson. But there's something about that name, Jesse Jackson and Jessica Jackson, that makes stirring speakers. She's really amazing, and she has that ability to be able to get you to say stuff back just like he does. Keep hope alive. Let me hear you. Keep hope alive, right? Fantastic. Absolutely. Anyway, I just want you to know I didn't do it. Everywhere I go, I can't help it. I got to tell you, I didn't do it. And I never raised your taxes. Even though my party wanted me to, I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do that either. Our country is facing a lot of difficulties, and I'll talk about that momentarily, but I just want to say a couple of quick things about how things have changed since I've come home. The Democratic Party that I was once in, sort of haven't completely given up on them. I'm a Cub fan, you know how it is for all those years, and they just never win, and hope springs eternal, and then I go to prison, and then they win the World Series in 2016. Sons of vicious. I couldn't see it. So it's kind of hard to leave the team that you're for, or you've been with for a long, long time. So it's still hard for me to say, well, I'm completely out. So I call myself a Trumpocrat. And I'm a Trumpocrat for a couple of reasons. Well, first of all, I had to answer a question. I went to Harvard to talk to the students at the John F. Kennedy School of Government a little over a year ago. And by the way, it's the only way I can get into Harvard was to actually be the governor of Illinois, then go to prison. Because when I would apply right out of high school or college, I couldn't get in. I would get my letter of rejection back on a Tuesday after sending that letter in on a Monday. But I was invited to be there, and the kids are asking me, they're going through my record as a Democrat, and they're saying, how could you possibly be for Donald Trump? And my first answer was, let me tell you something, I'm a single issue voter. You get me out of jail, you got my vote. But I'm a lot more than a single issue voter, and in all seriousness, I know Donald Trump a little bit. Had some experience with him on a television show called Celebrity Apprentice. Best thing I ever did. But Donald Trump truly loves this country. And I know the stuff he's going through because I had to go through it myself. And to go through what he goes through with the life that he had, billionaire real estate developer, #1 rated television show, entertainer, celebrity, that lifestyle that Trump and people like that live. And then to give all that up to be in the political arena and to be treated the way he's being treated by my party, well, the party that I was so involved in when I was governor, congressman, and state rep, and even by members of his own party. In other words, those who are part of the political establishment, the ruling elite, because they are in so many ways bipartisan. They play within certain boundaries. But for the most part, it's an inside game. And the rest of you, the rest of us, we have to pay for the stuff to keep their system and keep their gig going. It happens in Washington. It happens in the state government in Springfield, Illinois. It's how it is in too many cases because people of goodwill run for office and then they go to Washington when they get elected to Congress. So they go to Springfield when they're elected state rep, and suddenly the system co-ops them. And those systems are all about the people that are on the inside. It's former members of Congress who are now lobbyists. It's members of Congress who've been there for 1,000 years. It's speakers of the House in Illinois who've been there for 2,000 years. And I don't want to say anything to prejudice his circumstances right now because that should be up to the jury to make that decision. But we are the highest tax state in the nation because of that kind of leadership. Highest tax state in the nation. And there's more than 2,000 taxing units in Illinois. You know why they did it that way? So they can just cheat and lie and pickpocket you. Pick your pocket. So you don't really know who's taxing. So you can't really hold anybody accountable. All you know is you got less money. You're working longer, you're working harder, but you got less money. Because they find all kinds of ways to nickel and dime you and take your money. And not nearly enough in the priorities that ought to be there to help the real people who are out there doing the work of the world, but instead the special interests and the insiders, the deep state. There is a deep state. Donald Trump is right when he talks about that. And he is so courageous and so strong and so patriotic on how he's willing to put himself out there and fight that deep state. So I'm for him largely because of that. Had he passed me by, I'd have limped home 4 years after Mark and President Trump helped me come home, I'd have still been for him. I was for him when I was in prison watching him and watching some of this go down when it all happened. In fact, I'll tell you a story. And Cash, you'll appreciate this. I'm doing my job. You know, they make us have jobs in prison. And I had a variety of different jobs. By the way, that lieutenant who told you they didn't want you guys to eat, that's a merciful people because the food in prison sucks. She was being merciful to you, Cash. I don't think Huh?
That was pre-prison.
Oh, that was pre. Oh, oh. I don't want to malign our current governor, but he could do a little prison time just to kind of get his way. That guy's eating too good. But it was May of 2015. I'm doing my job. I'm mopping floors. And I'm near the televisions in the prison I was in. You're federal prison, right? They're segregated. You got the white TV, you got the black TV, and you got the Latino TV, Telemundo or Univision. No, this is how it is. It's a very segregated world, by the way, by design. And I write about this in a book that I'm writing, which is a real pain in the ass because I'm reliving those experiences and I'm having these recurring dreams that I'm still there. In fact, I had one the other night that I was in a new camp. They sent me to a different camp. They first put me in a higher prison in real life. And then when you behave well and you're under 10 years of your sentence, then you get to go to the camp, which is not as hard as the prison behind the razor wire. I'm the only governor in American history who went from a 50,000 square foot governor's mansion to a 6 foot by 8 foot prison cell. I'm in there with Crips and Bloods and gangster disciples and Sinaloa cartel drug dealers who look up to the gang leader El Chapo like my daughters look up to Taylor Swift. There were murderers in my prison. There were a couple of guys who actually took human life. There were murderers in there. There were bank robbers who turned out to be actually very nice guys. The bank robbers, something really honest about those guys. Nothing hypocritical about it. They want your money. They're not bullshitting around. They're just going to ask you, demand, give us the money. Nothing sneaky. You got to watch the con men, though. But in that first prison I was in for nearly 3 years, there were about 950 guys. There was all those gangbangers that I talked about, bank robbers. There were about 400 sex offenders, which was shocking. That was a shocking experience to be able to see that. The men that committed murder, 2% white collar, one governor, me. And anyway, when I got out of there, and it was 2015, and I'm in the camp and I'm sweeping floors, I look up to the television, CNN, where all the black guys watch television. And here's Donald Trump coming down an escalator with this beautiful woman with chestnut colored hair. And I look at that, but I can't hear it because you got to have headphones on to be able to hear the television. And I had my headphones on to music to help me do my jobs, mopping floors. And so I decided to see what was going on because I knew Trump years before. I'd been on Celebrity Apprentice. Anybody remember that? That you see me on? Remember that? He almost always gets it right, doesn't he? He was so right to fucking fire me, wasn't he? He was so right. I couldn't open a computer. Joan Rivers was haranguing me for serving her a hamburger that was cold. Nice woman, by the way. But who'd have thought when I was on that show, and they filmed that in October 2009, about 10 months after I'd been arrested, who'd have thought then that when he fires me, that he'd be the president of the United States? All those years later, I'd be mopping floors in prison, and I'd look up and I'd see him coming down the escalator with this beautiful woman with chestnut brown hair. And my first thought is, holy cow, he married her. Now, what am I talking about? Well, then my mind raced back to many years before, 12 years before, when I was a brand new governor. And I want to apologize for doing this to you, Republicans, but I was the first Democrat governor in 26 years. Before me, it was really kind of a leaning Republican state, certainly when it came to governors. That was certainly the case. And then me, and then I had the misfortune of getting reelected. I want to thank all of you for voting against me in that second election. Had there been more of you, I'd have never gone to prison. But unfortunately, weren't. Well, so I'm there and I'm looking and I think back to when I was riding high. And I'm now the governor of Illinois. At the time, believe it or not, before I became inmate number 4089244. You still remember your number?
Yeah.
You're never going to forget that, Cash. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, before I became inmate number 4089244, they were talking about me as a serious presidential candidate. I was like Obama before Obama 2 years later. They were looking for a new face from the Midwest to challenge Hillary because they figured she can't win a general election because she's just so darn unlikable. So they're looking for new faces. And all of a sudden, I'm getting invited to go to Los Angeles and Hollywood, where all the Democrat money is. They want to just give me campaign funds. They don't even know me. So I get to go out in June of 2003. I get to go to LA and I'm raising money. And somebody hands me a telephone at one of the fundraisers, and it's the movie star James Caan. Remember him? Remember The Godfather? Yeah. He gets on the phone. The first thing I say to him was, "Holy cow, let me tell you something. You were great the way you kicked Carlo's ass." Remember that scene? That guy beat his sister, and then James Caan, Sonny Corleone, beats him up. Remember that? Then not long after that, another guy passes me a phone. It's Sylvester Stallone. Hollywood, right? And I boxed the Golden Gloves in Chicago when I was growing up. And first time I ever got my name in the Chicago Tribune was when I was 17, 18, 1975. Golden Gloves, because the Tribune would sponsor the Golden Gloves. It was the only time the Tribune ever wrote anything nice about me. And so I had a boxing thing with Stallone because of Rocky, and I was able to quote his album cover, from the movie Rocky. And he invites me to his house. So I get to go to his house. What a great guy, by the way. And then 6 months later, I'm invited to go to New York because Chuck Schumer's biggest fundraiser wants to meet me. Yeah. But I'm telling you, this is what was happening to me at the time. His biggest fundraiser wanted to meet me, and he hosted a weekend for me there, and they were raising money for me in New York. And so one night, Saturday night in December 2003, he invites me and some of the entourage I had with me. Because when you're the governor, you can take entourages with you. And it included the state police security detail. And we went to Madison Square Garden to watch his fighter fight the heavyweight champion of the world, Klitschko, who's now the mayor of Kyiv. And you could see that when his fighter got in the ring, he looked a lot less like a champion boxer and a lot more like Governor Pritzker. So you kind of knew this guy didn't train, and he was going to get his ass kicked, and Klitschko knocked him out in the halfway through the second round. And now it was time to leave. And one of the perks you get when you're the governor, you get the security detail with you. And there were generally about 5 or 6 of them with me, is that 2 or 3 go ahead and they kind of clear the path, and then the other ones stay with you. Now, I didn't feel like I was at all, really never felt that, I was ever in danger or anything. It's certainly not New York, because nobody knew me. They knew me more after I got arrested than when I was governor doing, I think, good things. So these guys go ahead, and I see that 2 guys commandeer a freight elevator. That's another thing you get when you're the governor. You don't have to wait in line. They move you in and out of places real fast. So they're commandeering a freight elevator, and I look ahead, and I see an extremely familiar face, Donald Trump, in that freight elevator in December 2003. Now, this is 6 years before I do Celebrity Apprentice. And he's standing next to this beautiful woman with this jet black hair, very tall, obviously an international model. And, my first thought, being a man, was along the lines of that beautiful woman he was with, and thinking, man, you got to love this Donald Trump. And then I see my guys kicking him out of the elevator, and her. And he complies because they're the police. So he stands outside the elevator, and she does too. And they're holding it open for me. I walk in, and there I am, 12 years later in prison, looking at Melania and saying she lightened her hair. He married, that was Melania. And then I thought, those guys that worked for me kicked her and him out of that freight elevator. Thank God I invited them in to take a ride. Because if that backstabbing, selfish, sellout Obama ultimately sells me out for starting what I went to prison for and passes me by, which he ultimately did, my last line of defense, if I can't get justice in the courts, is Donald Trump. And sure enough, right? It ended up, he did it. Well, I didn't do it. He didn't do it. They did to me at the AAA level, to a Democratic governor, what they thought they can get away with doing to a Republican candidate for president at the major league level. That's what's happening in America today. That's exactly what's happening in America today. And when Jim talks about the threat to freedom, that's what's at stake. Freedom, and the gift of freedom is fragile. I've learned hard lessons about that. I never could imagine that prosecutors, the best and the brightest, who go to the best schools, could be so rotten and dirty and corrupt and dishonest, or that judges could be that way too. Yeah, I never knew that. But there was one area that knew it, And when all that stuff was coming down on me, and you got all that media around your house every single day, and you're doing the best you can to say, man, I didn't do it. I'm on every show I can get on. Thank goodness I was on those shows because Trump saw me on the David Letterman show. That's how I got on Celebrity Apprentice. If I don't do that, I do the whole 12 and a half years, assuming good behavior, which I had. I want you to know, as your former governor, I was a well-behaved inmate. I followed the rules. And I did it when I was governor too, those sons of bitches. So I could never give in. And I knew they knew that what they were trying to criminalize against me was politics. Obama sent an emissary to me to make a political deal on election night, November 2008. And the very next day, I ran a long way and I'm laying on the floor. I'm talking to one of my aides and I mentioned it, that this Balanoff, this labor union boss came up to me the night before. It was a magical night. I have my disappointments in Obama, but that night was magical. Put aside Obama, here's the United States of America living up to the promise of the Declaration of Independence. We've elected the first black person president of the United States. Now every black child can actually one day think, maybe I could be president too. That's what the American dream is all about. Everybody has a chance to reach as high as they can go. You need a little luck. You need to work real hard. But that was a beautiful night. It was so magical. And so this guy comes up, wants to make a deal. Trump, he says, Obama wants Valerie Jarrett. Can I call you and come and see it? Let's talk about making a deal. So that's what we talk about, all kinds of potential scenarios. And somebody suggests, hey, you know what? Maybe we ought to just make him happy. Give him whatever he wants. Let's not even make a deal. Just give him what he wants. So we discuss that. And I write in the book. You know, a couple of them thought we should do it. Most of us thought it was political malpractice because, to quote me, I got this thing and it's fucking golden and I'm not giving it up for fucking nothing. You ever hear that? Man, I sure hope I do something great in life, because if I don't change my narrative, that's in my obituary. But there was nothing corrupt about that. It was a political deal. These liars, and they twist it out of context. And they take it out of context. They won't let you play the rest of the tapes to this day. 98% of those tapes are under seal. And they get away with it with me, and I see what they're doing to Trump when he was president, Russian collusion. And that's another thing they do. They hire Madison Avenue and advertising firms to come up with these catchy names. Sale of the Senate seat, which incidentally was reversed by the appellate court after I'd been in prison for nearly 5 years. It was never a crime. I was right the whole time. It was never a crime. Then they kept me in there for 3 fundraising requests. No one even said I took a penny. I never took a gold bar. And Menendez gets 11 years and I get 14 years. What the fuck is going on here? But they did it to Trump. Now let me get serious for a second. This is no laughing matter. It ain't so much about President Trump and what they did to him personally and to his family, because it's a hard thing to have to deal with. Or me and my family, what they did to my little girls. I miss my daughters growing up. It's not even about us. It's about you and us together. We, the people, they're stealing from us our right to choose our leaders in elections that are free and fair. With these lies and this KGB Soviet-style politics. Now, my father fought the Nazis in World War II. He spent 4 years in a Nazi prisoner of war camp. And then when the war was over, he didn't return to his native Serbia, which at the time was Yugoslavia, because the country became communist. My father wanted a new life, to go to a place that was free. And so he waits in a refugee camp for 3 more years. So my father did 7 years sheltering in place. I got him beat. I did 8. But he waited for the Congress to pass the Displaced Persons Act. He gave my father and millions of others like him with these, Jessica, long and hard to pronounce last names, these wild-ass last names that a lot of people can't say, a chance to come to America and live the American dream. My father had this tremendous love for this country because it was a free place and a place where you can get ahead, the land of opportunity. I see my 3 Serbian brothers who helped underwrite this event here. These guys right here, fantastic. Miljan and Veli and Nick came from the old country, living the American dream. They're working their asses off. They're doing great financially. They're tremendously successful. They're making America great again by their efforts and their work. Land of opportunity. but above all, freedom. And that gift is truly fragile. It's not a certainty. It's why our founding fathers, they knew enough about history when they put this country together to know that you have to divide power. They knew absolute power corrupts absolutely. They knew it's human nature. They'll abuse power if you have too much of it. So they created this system of checks and balances. But what they didn't foresee, notwithstanding how wise they were, was that there would be this little part that came out of the executive branch of government, executive branch, that started in the 1920s. And it was called Federal Criminal Justice Agency, the FBI. And it was done because, understandably, they were going after Al Capone, the gangsters, and interstate commerce, and so they can enforce the laws and hold them accountable. What they didn't know, though, was that these guys in the FBI over time, little by little, this is what happens with people, they're not properly held in check, that they would abuse that power and begin to take some of the tactics they use against real criminals and use it in politics. And so they did it. They did it to me in 2008 and then 2011, and they've been doing it to President Trump. And this is why what he's going to do as president today is so important, to first save our democracy, and then to make America great again. And you and everything you've done to help get him elected and everything you're going to do, because you're organized and active and you haven't just given up because he just won, because you cannot. You have to stay active and involved, because this is a democracy. And so he doesn't get to do everything he wants to do just by himself. There are those checks and balances, but you got to put the pressure on those other people in the process to go along with your will, because you chose him to be your president. And when he tries to get things done and runs into obstruction, which is going to certainly get from the Democrats and even from some of those old school corporate country club, Cheney, Bush, Mitt Romney type Republicans, right? He's going to have that. The voices of the people, the quiet voice of the silent majority, needs to get loud, needs to be active, and needs to be heard. So I want to thank you as an American who loves this country for what you did. I'm going to wrap it up, and I just want to put some perspective on the troubles I've had in cash. You know, I've been writing this book, and I had these recurring, dreams that, I'm back in there. And, just the other day, in fact, yesterday morning, I get up and I write in the morning, and I've got 190,000 words. I should get, the publisher wants it to be like 100,000, so I got a lot of cutting to do. And then I noticed when I try to bring it down that I add new stuff, because I talk too fucking much, and that's what landed my ass in prison. But I was writing about the part where I said goodbye to my family on the 15th of March, 2012, early in the morning, and kissing my little girls goodbye. And my little Annie was 8, our older daughter Amy was 15. What that was like, and you write that stuff, and it affects me, because I will never forget what it was like. And I think about how hard that was, but I have to say, it was not easy. But let's keep in our prayers the families that lost their loved ones in that plane crash yesterday in Washington, and those little girls and the skating team and all the others and their families and their loved ones, and pray to God that he embraces them and shelters them in the shadow of his wings, because so many other people have had it so much worse than I had it. And I have to keep reminding myself, I have so much to be grateful for, and so many blessings. And I write a little bit about how hard it was to deal with that in prison, what my first night in prison was like when I'm facing 14 years and they shut those iron gates on you. You hear that sound, it's 10 o'clock, and now suddenly you're swallowed up in darkness. And man, I got a long way to go here as I get justice, but I've seen enough of that system to know it's rigged, and I'm probably not going to get it, but I'm going to keep hope alive. And I have a tendency sometimes to feel a little bit blue when I write that, but I shouldn't. So many people have it so much worse. And it's a reminder, and to all of us, that we should take nothing for granted, appreciate the blessings that we have, truly be grateful for the love that we have in our lives, and to do the best we can to lend a helping hand to someone else, to always fight for freedom, to defend freedom, because that is not given to us by government. That's given to us by God, the inalienable right to life and to liberty. So, look, I feel like what the fuck? Maybe that prison experience was really good. Maybe it gave me a better perspective. Maybe I'm going to be stronger. I know I'm stronger as a result of it. And I know, as Cash said, that it empowers you with a sense to really try to do things. And criminal justice reform, Jessica, for those of us who've been through the process, absolutely. And the Black community, had they been treated by the criminal justice system, that was the one place during those dark times where you could actually find love. Where I get to go to the Black churches and they were warm and loving and didn't believe everything the man is saying, when the rest of the society generally did. But it's changed now. Trump has changed that. We're waking up in America to the real dangers in our country and the threat to freedom. And you are all freedom fighters, and what you've been doing to try to fight to make America what it's supposed to be and to preserve what it's supposed to be. Because it's about government of the people, by the people, and for the people. And Lincoln said it. He was a Republican. He was from Illinois. And, well, what the heck? I was a Reagan Democrat. I'm a Trumpocrat. And if Lincoln were running for something today, I'd vote for him too. So I want to close by thanking you for everything you're doing. Thank you for your warm reception. Thank you for that standing ovation. It was an honor. It was an honor to be your governor. It was an honor to wake up every day and have the power to try to really do good things for everyday people. And so, may the road rise up to meet you. May the wind be always at your back. May the sun shine warm upon your face, the rain fall soft upon your fields. This is an Irish prayer, by the way. And until we meet again, may God hold you in the hollow of his hand. Thank you. Thank you very much.